When God decides to open the doors of wealth, no man, no system, no circumstance can shut them. You see, when heaven's favor rests upon you, it doesn't matter who stands against you, because what God ordains, no force on earth can overturn. The key to divine prosperity is not found in chasing after riches, but in chasing after the one who holds the keys to every door. When God opens the doors of wealth, it is not a moment of coincidence, it is a moment of divine orchestration. Heaven does not operate by luck or chance. It operates by purpose and faith. There are doors that men can build, doors that systems can guard, and doors that powers can try to seal. But when the Creator himself decides to open one, it becomes unstoppable. You can't explain it, you can't predict it, and you can't limit it. God moves beyond every natural law, beyond every protocol, beyond every limitation. And when he says, let it be, nothing in heaven or earth can say otherwise. Sometimes people spend their entire lives struggling to force doors open, begging for opportunities, chasing after recognition, comparing their lives to others, and exhausting themselves trying to make things happen. But the moment God steps in, everything shifts. One divine moment can erase years of struggle. One divine connection can replace a lifetime of disappointment. When the breath of God blows upon your efforts, what was once insignificant becomes influential. That is the nature of supernatural favor. It multiplies what you already have and magnifies it before the world. David Yonggi Cho often spoke about the incubation of faith, the power of visualizing and believing in what God has promised before it manifests. You see, when you walk with God, you're not working from lack. You're working from faith. You're not striving to become blessed. You're living from the position of blessing. You're not chasing wealth. Wealth is responding to your obedience. God never called his children to chase things. He called them to seek his kingdom. And when you do, he takes care of the rest. But the door of wealth that God opens is not only material. It is mental, emotional, and spiritual. He opens the doors of ideas, visions that transform industries, and creativity that solves problems, wisdom that governs nations. He opens the doors of influence, giving you a voice in rooms where you were never invited, placing your name in the hearts of people who have the power to bless you. He opens the doors of relationships, aligning you with destiny helpers, divine connections, and mentors who accelerate your journey. And yes, he opens the doors of financial increase, but not as an end, as a means for purpose. When you look at the story of Joseph, you see how God works. Joseph didn't climb his way to the top. God lifted him from the pit to the prison to the palace, not because of luck, but because every closed door was preparation for the one door that God himself would open. When Pharaoh needed an answer, Joseph's name was called. And in one day, his life changed forever. That is what happens when God opens your door. It happens suddenly, it happens supernaturally, and it happens beyond what you imagined. We often think we need to understand how it will happen, but faith doesn't operate through explanations, it operates through expectation. Faith says, I may not see it yet, but I believe it's already done. Faith says, I don't know when the door will open, but I know the one who holds the key. That kind of faith moves mountains, changes destinies, and opens doors that have been shut for generations. Sometimes the delay you are facing is not a punishment, it's preparation. God won't open the door until you are ready to walk through it with wisdom. Because if you enter too early, the blessing could crush you. But when your heart is aligned, when your motive is pure, when your faith is firm, that's when God releases what he's been storing up for you. What looks like a season of waiting is actually a season of building character, building faith, building dependence on him. There are people who will try to shut the doors that God has opened for you. They will speak against you, misunderstand you, try to limit your progress, or question your worth. But you don't need to fight them. You don't need to argue. You don't even need to explain. Just keep walking in obedience, because no man can close a door that was opened by the hand of God. Their words may echo, but his word prevails. Their plans may fail, but his purpose stands firm. The doors of wealth that God opens are not temporary. They are eternal. When man gives, it can fade away, but when God gives, it multiplies through generations. Look at Abraham. One promise became a legacy. God said, I will bless you, and you will be a blessing. That's the pattern of divine wealth. You are blessed to bless. You are given so that you may give. The true measure of prosperity is not how much you can keep, but how much you can release for the glory of God. When you begin to align your heart with heaven's agenda, you will find that the blessings start to chase you. Opportunities will find you. Ideas will overflow. Peace will reign in your home. Because wealth without peace is poverty in disguise, but when God blesses, He adds no sorrow with it. His blessings don't demand your anxiety, they bring rest. You may be standing today before doors that look sealed. Maybe you've tried, you've prayed, you've fasted, and it feels like nothing is moving. But remember, the silence of God is not the absence of God. Sometimes the greatest miracle has happened behind closed doors. When you least expect it, the key will turn and everything will open. And when it happens, you will realize it was never your strength, never your wisdom, never your effort. It was His grace all along. You will look back and see how every closed door, every delay, every disappointment was part of His plan to position you for something greater. Because what God opens is not fragile. It cannot be stolen. It cannot be shut. So keep believing, keep trusting, and keep sowing. Every prayer, every act of faith, every step of obedience is moving you closer to that divine door. And when it finally opens, it won't just bless you. It will overflow to everyone connected to you. That is how God works. He takes one act of faith and turns it into a river of abundance. When God opens the doors of wealth that no man can close, it is not only to change your life, it is to change the lives of those who witness it. Because when people see what He has done in you, they will know it wasn't by might nor by power, but by His Spirit. That is the kind of wealth that brings glory to God. Wealth with purpose, wealth with peace, wealth that testifies that God is still opening doors no man can close. When God opens the doors of wealth, He does it in ways that defy logic, patterns, and expectations. He doesn't need your resume, your background, or your connections. He needs your heart. He looks for those whose hearts are turned toward Him, whose faith is anchored not in riches, but in righteousness. Because the wealth that comes from God is not earned by striving, it is released through surrender. When you let go of control and allow God to direct your path, He takes you places that human effort could never reach. There are people who spend their lives climbing ladders that lead to nowhere because the ladder is leaning against the wrong wall. But when you climb by faith, God places His own ladder, one that connects heaven to earth. Every step is guided, every move is ordered, every encounter is purposeful. You don't need to manipulate outcomes when you walk in divine alignment. The same God who created the universe can rearrange circumstances, people, and timing just to get you where you belong. When the Lord opens a door, it doesn't come with stress. It comes with peace. You won't have to force it. You won't have to fight for it. You won't have to beg anyone to see your worth. Because when it's God's timing, favor speaks louder than effort. He causes people to remember your name, even when you've been forgotten. He positions your gift before those who need it most. He multiplies your obedience into overflow. David Yonggi Cho often taught about the power of the Holy Spirit as the creative force behind prosperity. He said that every miracle begins in the imagination of faith. Before anything appears in your hands, it must first take shape in your spirit. You must see yourself walking through the open door before it physically opens. You must believe you are blessed while you are still standing in lack. You must talk abundance while your surroundings whisper scarcity. Faith is not denying reality. It's declaring a higher one. There is something extraordinary that happens when a person chooses to believe that God's door is better than any door the world can offer. Because the world gives with strings attached. God gives with freedom attached. The world demands credentials. God requires faith. The world opens doors for a few. God opens doors for anyone who believes. His system is not built on competition. It's built on conviction. When you are walking in divine favor, the same hands that once rejected you will be used to bless you. God doesn't need to remove your enemies. He can prepare a table before you in their presence. Sometimes the people who tried to block your blessing will have to witness you being elevated. That's not revenge. That's revelation. It's God showing the world that His favor is not determined by man's approval. There are moments in life when you feel surrounded by walls of fear, debt, limitation, or delay. But God never asks you to climb those walls. He asks you to believe that He can bring them down. Just like Jericho, the walls fall not by strength, but by faith. Praise is the sound that shakes the locks loose. Worship is the key that turns the door. When you start to thank God for what He's about to do, even before it happens, you activate the atmosphere of breakthrough. When the Lord opens the doors of wealth, it's not always through money appearing in your account overnight. Sometimes it's through giving you an idea, a connection, a revelation, or a divine strategy. Remember, God doesn't just bless your hands, He blesses your mind. He gives you the wisdom to create wealth, the discernment to manage it, and the compassion to share it. Because wealth without wisdom is wasted, and blessing without purpose is dangerous. God's prosperity always carries purpose. He lifts you up so you can lift others. He blesses you to be a blessing. He provides not just to fill your house, but to overflow into the lives of others. When God's favor rests upon you, it changes everything about how you see wealth. You no longer chase things, you attract them through obedience. You no longer worry about tomorrow, you trust the one who holds it. Sometimes the open door of wealth is disguised as a small opportunity. Don't despise the day of small beginnings, because God's doors don't always look like doors at first. They may come as ideas that others overlook, tasks that seem beneath you, or relationships that seem ordinary. But hidden within them is the seed of destiny. When you are faithful in the small, God multiplies it into much. That's how He tests readiness, through responsibility. Look at how Jesus multiplied the loaves and fishes. He didn't create new bread from heaven. He multiplied what was already in someone's hands. That is divine wealth, taking what you have and breathing upon it until it grows beyond measure. God doesn't need to give you more things. He needs you to trust Him with the little you have, because faith is the atmosphere in which divine multiplication takes place. When you walk in covenant with God, no season can rob you. Even in famine, you can flourish. Isaac sowed in a time of scarcity, and God blessed him 100-fold. That same God has not changed. The economy of heaven is never in crisis. Heaven does not depend on markets, inflation, or global conditions. When the Lord is your shepherd, lack cannot live in your house. The doors of wealth that God opens also come with protection. Because when He blesses you, He surrounds you with His covering. What He gives cannot be stolen, and what He establishes cannot be shaken. You will move in peace, and no curse, jealousy, or attack will be able to undo what His hand has ordained. Divine favor is not fragile, it's fortified. Many people ask for blessings, but few are ready for responsibility. That's why God sometimes delays the door. He's not withholding, He's preparing. He's shaping your heart so that when the blessing comes, it doesn't become your idol. Wealth must never replace the giver. It must reflect His glory. True prosperity is not about how much you possess. It's about how much of you God possesses. If you want God to open your door, learn to open your heart. Gratitude opens heavens. Generosity opens opportunity. Worship opens presence, and obedience opens favor. The more surrendered you are, the more supernatural your results will become. There is a realm where blessings come looking for you. It's the realm of divine acceleration. Things that took others 10 years, God can do for you in 1. Things that seemed impossible suddenly become simple. That's what happens when you walk through a door that only God could open. Everything aligns, everything multiplies, everything flows. So don't worry about the closed doors behind you. Every no was preparing you for a divine yes. Every rejection was redirection. Every delay was divine design. When it's your time, nothing can stop it. The same God who raised Joseph, blessed Abraham, and prospered Isaac is still opening doors today. And when He opens the door of wealth in your life, no man, no system, no power of darkness will ever be able to close it. When God opens the doors of wealth, it's never about luck. It's about divine alignment. Heaven's timing is perfect, even when it feels delayed. Sometimes God will allow you to walk through seasons of lack just to train your heart for abundance. He teaches you to depend on Him when you have little, so that when you have much, you never forget the source. Every challenge, every delay, every disappointment becomes part of the process that shapes your character for the level He is preparing you to handle. God is not just interested in blessing your hands, He's building your spirit so you can sustain the blessing. There are people who cry out for open doors, yet they are not ready to step through them. God's doors are not just opportunities, they are assignments. When He opens a door, He expects faithfulness, humility, and stewardship. He doesn't just bless you for comfort, He blesses you for calling. The reason He entrusts wealth to certain people is because He knows they will use it for His kingdom. If you want God to open your door, prepare your heart to serve through it. Wealth that glorifies God always flows toward purpose. The world has its own definition of wealth. Numbers, possessions, power. But heaven's definition is different. In God's eyes, you are wealthy when you carry peace that money cannot buy, joy that circumstances cannot steal, and faith that fear cannot break. Yet he also promises material provision because he delights in blessing his children. He said, I will open the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing so great you will not have room enough to receive it. That is not just poetic language. It is the covenant of abundance. When God begins to move, he can turn the smallest seed into a forest of blessing. He can take the most ordinary person and turn them into a vessel of extraordinary influence. He can cause your name to be spoken in places you've never stepped into by people you've never met. He can turn your labor into harvest overnight. The miracle is not in the door itself. It's in the God who holds the key. Never underestimate what obedience can unlock. One step of faith can open what 1,000 plans could not. One prayer spoken in faith can shift decades of limitation. God is not looking for the perfect. He's looking for the surrendered. When you align with His will, your life becomes a testimony that no man can deny. The doors of wealth that God opens are wide enough for generations to pass through. What He gives you today is meant to bless your children and their children. His blessings ripple through time. So don't measure your destiny by what you see now. Measure it by the promise that cannot fail. Because when God opens the doors of wealth, they do not creak, they do not crack, and they never close. They stay open until His purpose is fulfilled. So when you stand before the door that God has opened, walk through it with faith, with gratitude, and with purpose. Don't hesitate, don't doubt, and don't look back. What God has opened for you is not temporary. It is eternal, secured by His promise and sealed by His power. No man can shut it, no enemy can block it, and no circumstance can reverse it. The same God who spoke light into darkness is now speaking abundance into your life. The doors of wealth are not just for your comfort, but for your calling. They are open so you can become a vessel of blessing, to lift others, to build His kingdom, and to testify that His favor is real. You are not stepping into wealth by chance. You are stepping into destiny by design. So lift your head, fix your eyes on heaven, and walk boldly through that door. Because when God opens the doors of wealth that no man can close, it's not just the beginning of prosperity. It's the beginning of purpose fulfilled.